Hello, thank you for joining us for our first ever live town hall meeting on Facebook. We are really excited about using this technology in a way to share the good work that the office does, talk about some emerging topics, and answer questions along the way. But because this is our first time ever coordinating an event like this, we ask you please be patient with us as we learn along the way of how we can use this as a great vehicle really to reach out to the communities that we serve. Tonight we plan on answering questions if we can. We're also going to have these events regularly, so if we don't get to your question, maybe we can cover it next time or we can answer it in the comments. This is really an opportunity to address some issues that I get approached with all the time when I'm out in the community. Sometimes people walk up and ask questions. In fact, I had a question just the other day about why we in the Office of the District Attorney don't always share and talk about the facts of the case. Well, I can tell you the reality of that is our first and foremost priority is to the victims and the integrity of the case. And I say that because there are actually California rules of professional conduct. There's laws on the books that talk about what we can't say. Now, the laws of what we can't say, it's kind of general. Basically, it's a legal standard, and I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. We cannot make any comments which would have a substantial likelihood of prejudicing the ongoing criminal case. Now, that's very vague. What the law does is tell us specifically what we can say, and those types of information are what you see in our routine press releases and the information that we put out. We can talk about things that are otherwise public records, such as defendants' names, age, location of crimes, addresses, the crime types, maybe sentencing, and there are rare occasions and circumstances that we can talk about the specific facts, but only if there is a need to warn the public of impending danger. So in looking at the information that we release, we've probably in the last year or two come to a point where we're now more accessible with information that we share than ever before. As many of you know, we have a full-time public information officer. We are accessible on numerous platforms, obviously Facebook here, Instagram, Twitter, and so I want to make sure that we convey that the public has a right to know what business is conducted in the criminal justice system under the confines of the law, and we're going to do everything we can to share that information. Some other questions let me talk about why. When I talk about the integrity of the case, if we were to release information that a court would deem inappropriate, we could be sanctioned. Now, the sanction could be anything from holding that evidence inadmissible in court, which would obviously impact our ability to prosecute a case, all the way up to possibly a change of venue. If something that we've done would be viewed by the court as creating an unfair jury pool, we could have the case sent to a different county, and that certainly wouldn't be right for the victims and their families. So when we talk about those victims and holding the integrity of that case as paramount, that's why. Because the reality is, if we have a slip of the tongue, if you will, we could actually impact a case and the victim's day in court. When I talk about recusal, that makes me think of recently I was asked about their question dealing with the Attorney General and his recusal of the case that they're looking at, which I thought may be an interesting opportunity for us to talk about in general. What is a recusal and what is our office policy and how do we go about that? So a recusal in reality is nothing more than being removed from a case. As we saw in the national headlines, the Attorney General removed himself from the operations and the discussions of that case. That can happen. A prosecutor's office can remove themselves, or we can remove a specific employee or prosecutor from the case, or at times a judge, a judicial officer, may recuse the entire office from handling a case. So again, there's a legal standard that comes into play for that, and really it's very, very broad. And I'm gonna read it again because I had this in my notes. Recusal will not be granted unless there's evidence of an actual conflict of interest that exists and that would render it unlikely that the defendant would get a fair day in court. So it rises to more than just an appearance of a conflict or an appearance of impropriety. It has to rise to the level of actually an evidentiary conflict, which would keep that individual, that defendant, from having a fair day in court. It's really interesting, the relationship then between the state district attorney or the county district attorney and the state attorney general. Often I get asked, why isn't the state attorney general prosecuting a case? We have to work closely with the state attorney general, but the reality is we can't force, if you will, the AG to prosecute a case. We have a good relationship with our state AG and some of the surrounding district attorneys in Fresno County, Ms. Smitkamp, Ms. Green in Kern County, and we'll work with them. So the office's process on determining if we have an actual conflict, quite often our staff will be in contact with the Attorney General's office and we'll present the information, what we perceive the potential conflict to be, and we'll get a legal opinion from the Attorney General's office, and they're very good about helping us out and determining that no, there's no actual conflict, that our office can legally go forward and do it. Then we make an internal decision of whether we can possibly maybe wall off a certain prosecutor or a staff member. Maybe it's a family member that's charged with the crime, and we can do that. Or if the situation is such that we feel that it's just not appropriate for the office to prosecute this case, we will either go back to the Attorney General or work with our surrounding county partners. And we've done this for a number of years. We've got a good relationship with both the Fresno County District Attorney's Office and Kern County District Attorney's Office, and we've done that in the past. On those times where we feel that our office would not be appropriate to make the decision or prosecute the case, we will refer those matters outside. Likewise, I get calls infrequently, but from time to time, from those two offices, and we will send a prosecutor down to help those offices if they have a similar situation. It's really dependent upon good cooperation from our Attorney General and good cooperation from those other offices about when we determine it's appropriate or not appropriate for us to handle a case. But again, just because there's an appearance of an impropriety or a thought out there, that doesn't rise necessarily to the level of legally in court there being a conflict such that we as the district attorney's office are not able to prosecute a case. So that's come up from time to time. On a different topic, I was asked today, I was down in the southern part of the county, and I was asked today about why sometimes it takes so long for a case to get prosecuted. And I had an interesting discussion with someone in the community about that, and sharing the story as they relate that, they read about an arrest in the newspaper, and then it takes a long time for the district attorney's office to file charges. And sometimes that's the case. There are a number of reasons why that could be. One, if it's a felony and we file charges, we have to, by law, be ready to go and prove that case in court in a preliminary hearing within 10 days. So if we file charges, we really don't have a lot of time to continue to do investigative work. Now, in today's day and age, we have a lot of scientific evidence that comes into play. I can think of off the top of my head, and I shared the story because it was actually a case they were asking about. Part of the delay was for a mechanical analysis of a vehicle involved in the crime. That took a while for the experts and the agencies to do. Quite often we have other scientific evidence such as drug analysis, maybe an autopsy even, and it takes a while for those results to get here. And again, in today's world of technology, quite often we're relying upon search warrants to companies outside, such as cell phone records, maybe even Facebook itself. And it takes a while to get that information back and we have to have it not only for the investigation, but in a manner that is admissible in court. So quite often, those are some of the reasons that it takes a while between when you maybe read about an arrest and when the district attorney's office actually files charges. But quite often, there's a reason for it. We can't rush into the process. If you ever have a question as to whether or not the district attorney's office has filed charges, or maybe why not, in the limited capacity that we talked about, what we can share, please contact the office. We've got staff available, victim advocates that are available to talk about the process and where we are at in it. And we're more than happy to do so when we appropriately can. But we're really excited about this venue and Facebook Live with these town hall meetings. And what we hope to do is start a dialogue about some of the good work that the office is doing, and maybe what we can look forward to in 2017 as the year unfolds. And some of the things that we are looking forward to, quite honestly, is how we continue to utilize, for the first time ever here in Tulare County and really in the surrounding areas, our Comfort Dog. Many of you have seen and commented and shared your approval. Fortune, our Comfort Dog, is on staff, and I can assure you that not a day goes by that he's not helping out child victims in the process. As of today, here in early March, he's actually not gone to court and testified with a child in court. But we're practicing for that because you have to remember he's still a young dog and he's in training as well and learning. But every day he's in child interviews with child victims and child witnesses, and we've seen every day, every week, how he makes that process helpful to them. In fact, in all honesty, we're beginning to realize that in probably the next 6 months, 8 months, and a year, we could easily have more work than one dog could be able to handle. So we're in the process of potentially expanding that program and adding a second dog, and we're excited about that. We hope that that will come to fruition. And again, that's just another expansion of our Crimes Against Children team. Some of the other things that we're looking forward to in 2017 is really rolling out and continuing to roll out our Human Trafficking Task Force. I think it's a fair statement to say that a couple of years ago, we in Tulare County, no one was talking about the topic of human trafficking. But with the implementation of our task force that we've got and our partnership with all of our local law enforcement agencies, it's really exciting about what we've been able to do. And looking forward in 2017, I'm really excited about the partnership with our agencies and what we can do to tackle that problem of human trafficking that we see. Because the reality is, I think probably in about a year and a half, we've already rescued, I'll say probably 30 to 40 young girls, and we've prosecuted more than a couple dozen defendants. And that's not even including some of the cases that are still under investigation. It's quite remarkable what law enforcement and the DA's office have done in partnership to bring us to this point. I'm very excited about what we're doing in partnership with our Sheriff's Department. You read about it, you see it all the time with what they're doing for the child internet safety aspect, and we've got the task force working as well. So I think 2017, you're only going to continue to hear that fight against human trafficking brought to bear more and more. Another thing that I think 2017 should bring is continuing our work with the Red Soul case. And we've talked about Red Soul time and time again. We, out of the 82 defendants that were arrested that day, we've got about 20 or 30 still in the system active. We've resolved quite a lot of them, but we do have a lot of defendants that are still pending, and they're pending some serious charges, and based on that, it's appropriate that they've taken this long, but we hope that going forward in 2017, we can start conducting some jury trials for those individuals and kind of finish up those roles, because the reality is it's been a huge drain, not only in the law enforcement community going forward, but our office as well. When you look at the statistics for the homicide cases, we look at the year statistics that we filed Red Soul, We've filed more homicide cases that year than in any year in recent memory. So we look forward to a lot of those cases resolving out, and then looking forward to the next fight that we can work with law enforcement to protect our communities. We're really excited about this opportunity to go live and share some of the good works that we're doing. I think our vision going forward is to maybe have other members of staff do some of these town halls, and not just hear from the district attorney, maybe hear from our chief investigator. A lot of people in the communities are surprised to hear that inside the office of the district attorney, we have over 40 sworn law enforcement officers. And so when you compare that countywide, that's equivalent, it's about equal to the third largest local police agency. That's quite a large police force that we have. Mostly, our men and women in the Bureau are not first responders. They are doing follow-up work, but there are crime types that we do investigate from start all the way through fruition. Human trafficking is one of those. We do a lot of fraud, workers' compensation, welfare fraud. We do auto insurance fraud. A lot of those boutique cases, real estate fraud is a perfect example. A lot of those boutique cases that some of our smaller agencies really don't have the resources to do. We're more than happy and fortunate to be supported by our board and our grant programs that we're able to help out those agencies in doing some things that really are more of a long-term investigation. So our Bureau is very excited about where we're at from a staffing standpoint. We've got a great cadre of sworn police officers, and we're looking forward to what we can do. But maybe it'd be interesting to hear from our chief investigator on some of the topics that they're looking at, some of the training that we do. We've got our state-recognized expert on human trafficking, and she goes around the state. Another thing that we're really looking at is computer forensic support for our law enforcement agencies. We actually have equipment here on site in Visalia that we can help out any police agency that needs it, whether it's downloading and forensically searching computers or cell phones or any type of equipment like that. That's a service that we provide to local law enforcement agencies, and I think it'd be entertaining to hear from the Bureau. Another topic that we're going to cover down the road is we're going to do a night on simply what happens, what should I do if I get a subpoena to come to court. We've talked in the past about what it means to serve on a jury, and I think it'd be good down the road to talk about what it means, what you need to do if you actually get a subpoena to come to court and testify. We've got a group of witness coordinators. Their function is to make sure that all witnesses, whether they be a civilian, if you will, or law enforcement, are notified of court proceedings and informed of when and where to go. But we would hope that our staff, our prosecutors, and our investigators are talking to the witnesses and the victims and the families prior to coming to court, and make sure they're aware and understand what the process entails. And I think one night we'll take an opportunity really to share that. And then I'd like to have some of our victim advocates come in and talk about a program that's really something near and dear to us that we've been doing for a while, and that's our Kids Court program. And over the last several months, you've probably read about some of the good work that the communities have done coming together in donating not only some stuffed animals, but cookies and things like that for our Kids Court program. And our Kids Court program, in a nutshell, is an opportunity that we bring child victims, child witnesses in, and we show them kind of, I guess, just an introduction of what coming to court is going to be like. We try in every way possible to make the process as comfortable as we can. We don't want it to be intimidating, and we don't talk about the facts of their case in any way. What we're trying to do is just provide an opportunity where they see the inside of a courtroom and they understand the role of all the people in the courtroom that they're going to come into contact with. And again, we use Fortune in our Kids Court program, and he's doing a great job. So those are some of the things that we have going forward for 2017. I want to thank you for tuning in with us. If you have not already, Check us out on all of our social media platforms. Again, obviously here on Facebook, but our Instagram, our Twitter account. We want to make sure that the good work that the men and women in the Office of the District Attorney is doing is known to you, the community in which we serve. We thank you and have a good night.